Welcome to the first in a series of the Pro Landscaper online summits. Today the focus is on a large-scale domestic and commercial construction. So we can just start with maybe just a quick going round, just let people know what's the position in terms of your company. Are you still working? What have you done with your staff? Just a very quick update on the situation. So should we start with you, Phil?
Thanks, Jim. Morning, everyone. I'm Phil Jones, for those who don't know me. At the moment, I'm CEO of ESL Landscape Contractors in Sussex. At the moment, we have most of our staff furloughed. We have a couple of people in the office doing accounts and finance. Our sales team are still working, obviously remotely from home, but we remain, I was going to say we remain as busy as ever on sales, but actually we've increased our activity on sales in the last couple of weeks. So the sales team are I think slightly jealous in terms of everyone else having gone home and been furloughed, and then we're working flat out for the good of the business, which is great. And apart from that, all our teams, except for a couple of maintenance teams who are still operating safely, all our construction teams are at home, sitting it out, as it were.
Okay, Ken White.
Good morning, everybody. Same thing. I'm Ken White, Managing Director of Frost Landscapes. So for us, all site teams are currently furloughed, and that includes maintenance. And we will look at that in the coming weeks. We're coming under a lot of pressure to change that. Office staff have all been set up to be able to work from home. And very much like Phil, our estimating side or the sales side is going absolutely nuts. In fact, we've been hiring during this period to cope with the quantity of extra estimating that we're being asked to do. We're trying our best to balance business with keeping our staff safe at the moment. Okay. With a mixture of clients, really, but we'll talk about that no doubt later on. Some are very pleased that we're not working, some differently.
Okay. Come to John Wyer.
Hi. Morning, everyone. Yeah, we've got, during normal times, we have three streams of revenue principally. So it's design, construction and aftercare. And the design side is very busy. We've seen no let up in that. In fact, we picked up in the last couple of weeks quite a lot more work. So the designers are all working from home. We have a skeleton staff in the office of normally of two people. So there's one director on rota and one admin staff who comes in. The construction side, that has pretty much ground to a halt. There were a number of issues there in terms of supplier problems and logistics of getting everybody to site, because we stopped people using public transport about 3 weeks ago. And then also sites closing and problems with welfare. So we have furloughed 70% of our construction staff, and we paused work just under 2 weeks ago. And then we, after reassessing and thinking everything through very carefully, talking to our staff, talking to our clients, we restarted the maintenance side of the business, working one person to a vehicle, social distancing, no client contact, and about 80% of our maintenance side is running at the moment. And the construction is going to continue where we can, but that's very few sites now. So most of our construction staff were furloughed last week and a few more today. So, but the business is very solid in that respect because of the income we've got coming in from the maintenance side and the design side. So, you know, we see it as being relatively stable.
Okay, and Mark?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Well, actually, we are working. We've furloughed probably only about 8 staff through health reasons. And for, like John said, people that rely on public transport. Probably 5 out of 8 sites are currently working, so all our construction sites are open. We've walked away from 3 sites which are deemed unsafe and we can't operate on them properly. Our office is closed. Having said that, we're manning it with the directors like John is. So all our office staff are working from home, and that's working really, really well. Design, like John, that's all working very, very well, and they're flat out busy working from home. Our maintenance side is never closed anything down actually, but evaluating every site and everything we do very, very carefully. And a few clients have requested that we don't go because they're getting peer pressure from neighbourhoods and things like that. But generally, working within the letter of the law and making an individual assessment for everything that the business does. I understand, obviously, some businesses have closed, and I completely get that. We looked at it very, very carefully and thought, you know, where we can, we think we should be doing this. And I still believe that. We've got contractual arrangements that I do feel that we have to meet, and where the government of allowing people to go to work, it was very unclear to start with, but it's become clearer now that if we can put one guy in one vehicle and safe practices of work, then I do think for us, for our business, that's the right thing to be doing, and that's what we're doing. I believe we're doing it safely, and I do believe we've got to think about coming out of this. As I said, every business has to make their own decisions, but that's what we're doing. I'm now here running this site. This is our site at Wisley, only because the site manager's on holidays and I can't run it without any managers. So I'm basically isolate myself here, just keeping a view, because this is a live site for us.
John Melmoe, do you want to add anything on that?
No, I think it was obviously chaos in the early days. I think there was potentially an overreaction, understandably. I think it's now a case of things have stabilised. The government's guidance is a lot clearer than it was in the early days. And I think it's now time to start looking for getting back at it. Enough of the navel gazing. Let's be proactive. Let's start getting a more positive spin on this, and start planning for recommencing normal day-to-day life.
John, just a quick question on that then, John. John Melmoe. Overreacting by whom?
I think there's overreacting by individuals, firstly, definitely, not understanding. I mean, the difference between this and previous crises, and we have all worked through previous crises, we do forget this. There have been some major ones over the years. This difference here is you're dealing with life. And that's the fundamental difference. So I can understand why individuals and companies were fearful in the early days. Totally understand it. I don't get it now.
Okay.
I think
Sorry, carry on, John, sorry.
Yeah, I think now we are where we are. There is absolutely nothing we can do about the virus apart from taking the safety precautions that are recommended, and we need to get on with life.
Okay, a couple of questions coming in. First of all, Ken, can you please turn your mic up? And the second thing is anyone got an idea, or it's from Simon Headley, anyone got an idea of how much construction work in the commercial sector is still happening? What kind of percentage would anyone have an idea on that? Ken?
If I work on the basis of my own, then I would say that 70% of it is shut down. We really only have one site that is still operating, and one site which we're actually getting an awful lot of abuse from the client for not being on site. And I don't wish to get into an inter-panel discussion or debate, but I disagree very strongly with John. The overall government advice is stay home, save lives, protect the NHS. We are going through the biggest period of on-demand in history, where demand for work is dropping off. But it does, John's right, it does concern life. But every night, the one thing it says on the TV is stay home, protect the NHS, save lives. And this is about trying to prevent the NHS from getting bombarded and full of people. So I'm struggling really to understand why most of us are still at work.
And Ken, you're getting pressure from clients to return to work, are you?
Sorry, one client in particular, yes,
Right.
who doesn't believe that COVID-19 is having any impact on our ability to carry out work. I mean, effectively, this is a force majeure. But sadly, a force majeure only gives us access to time, not to the cost, which is potentially, I think every business has to do what's right for itself. And I think that we will end up with some people back at work, but largely the overriding advice is to stay home.
Okay. Phil Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Yeah, I mean, to answer your first question, we reckon there's probably about the same as Ken reckons. There's probably 65 to 70% of our clients are saying are either closed or have said don't come. We've probably managed the rest of them pretty well, I think, in terms of we've got a couple who we said we gave them fair warning, said we're not coming till it's over. They have accepted, not agreed, but accepted, which is great, and we're still in dialogue with them to make sure that we can help them. I mean, I'd like to go back to the original point around is this an overreaction? I think John is right in terms of there being a massive, understandable emotional overreaction. To start with, and that was born out of no one knowing what the hell this thing meant to any one of us or any one of our businesses. And I mentioned the word business because I think as soon as you put the word business into a sentence about COVID-19, you confuse the issue. This is about people and people's lives. And we have to, quite rightly, and everyone makes their own decisions up about who goes to work, who doesn't, how much revenue we want to gather over the next 2 months, how much profit we want to make. But ultimately, my decisions and that of our business are made on the people and the individuals and the families they belong to. And those people they may affect by going out of the door, because stay at home means one thing. And once you go out of the door, you're breaking that stay at home.
Okay, question just come in, and I'll ask, I think we know Ken's view, that maybe yours, Phil, but it says, do the panellists think the companies have a moral obligation to stop working completely in order to confirm to the government's request, stay at home and save lives? I'll start with John Wyer on that one, please.
I think I think it's a very good question. I think that the government is sending very mixed messages, because they are sending message to the public saying stay at home and save lives, but on the other hand they're encouraging business to continue working. They're trying to sort of have their cake and eat it in a way, because the government guidance is very clear on about the construction industry and about maintenance as well. They're saying that if you don't have any client contact and you can follow safe guidance on working practices, and particularly if it's external, then they actually say you should continue to work. And I think, I mean, we were quite conflicted about this, and that was one of the reasons why we paused. And principally the pausing, that the situation was extremely fluid in terms of suppliers and clients and everything else. We had a lot of clients contacting us asking that we continue to come, and this is on the aftercare side of the business. And I think that we spent a lot of time looking at how we could do that safely so that we're not putting anybody at risk. You know, maybe a lot of the listeners out there won't realise, but Robert Jenricks actually wrote to the construction industry praising them for continuing to work. So the government is sending very mixed messages, I think. And I do understand that you know, the obligation we all have to stay at home. And you know, in a way, it would be simpler if the government just got off the fence and adopted one position on this, I think, because it's not the situation is clear now, only in as much as it's clear that they're trying to say two things at once, I think.
Mark, Gregory?
Well, as I said, I think it's for every business to actually look at it, and I think, you know, looking after our people is the key thing, absolutely key thing. We were asked to do under contract to do some construction in central London on a site, and it was deemed completely, not just slightly, just not fit and not following the guidelines. So we are analysing on a daily basis, and I do believe that I've got more risk of catching something going into the co-op to catch my daily things than I do feel here. Actually, I think, you know, we are looking at not using public transport, isolating ourselves on small sites and making small teams and making strategic plans per job. And it's not money driven. I don't believe it's about money. It's about actually following the government guidelines to the letter, actually. And I do believe if we're going to come out of this, I mean, it's about the keeping as best we can things going, keeping a normality about stuff. And I certainly don't think it's for us. It's about driving profit. It's about well-being and mental thing, and being outside and doing stuff which we can do. I can't walk away from some of our maintenance sites. Some of our maintenance sites, I just can't walk away and come back in 3 months. There's a massive duty of care on those schemes. But actually, I think it's for every business to actually look at themselves. So is this a government guidelines, or is this a morality thing? And we've looked at it, absolutely looked at it. And for our business, it's the right thing to do. For other businesses, I completely agree. It's not for them.
Okay, I'm going to go back to John Wyer.
I think that although I would agree with what Phil and Ken were saying in terms of percentage, roughly 70% of our construction has stopped, and I completely agree with what Mark said about you know, we weigh every site is different, every member of staff has different requirements, and everybody's situation is different. So for people who are relying solely on public transport, we furloughed those people because we couldn't see any safe way to get them to work. You know, picking them up in another vehicle, that's not safe. So, but beyond that, I suspect that the disruption to supply side means that in any case, quite a lot of the construction sites that remain open now will begin to close over the next 2 weeks. The situation may stabilise and suppliers may start deliveries again safely, but I could see that a lot of the remaining construction work may fizzle out over the next few weeks anyway.
Okay, John Melmoe, do you want to come back on that? And the other thing I'd like to ask first, John, or as well, is why do you think the government haven't made it as clear for the construction industry as they have for non-food retail, etc.?
Well, they have made it clear. The construction is open. After the initial panic, construction sites opened. These are major construction sites. And I completely concur with Mark. It's down to each individual business to do its own risk assessments to protect its staff. And that's a job by job, project by project decision. And they will all be different. Now, a lot of the people, once you put them into furlong, they've got to remain in furlong for 3 weeks before they are permissible. So everyone's rushed to put people into furlong, and they're locking up potentially their workforce. Now, what should happen and it is paramount that we protect our staff. That is absolute paramount. But each situation is different. You cannot have one rule right across the board. The industry is so diverse, from water features to construction sites to maintenance in private gardens. It's so diverse that there is not one situation that is right. Each situation has to be decided on the merits and the risks associated with it. And the biggest risk actually isn't on some of these sites, it's getting the staff to site in a safe fashion. That is one of the biggest problems. It's not them working in an open garden. They're less risk than Mark shopping at the co-op, and I am disappointed, Mark, that you used the co-op, but that's another story. But no, that's the situation is site by site, and it has to be getting people to them. That's the difficulty. It's not that the work isn't there. Everyone was busy before this crisis. Everyone was flat out, and all of a sudden the virus has hit, and the uncertainty that has gone with it, I think people have overreacted. And I think it's now time to start thinking and planning for coming out of this. How are we going to get the industry moving again, even if at a snail's pace, safely? We need to change the mindset.
Thanks, John. I'm going to just go to Ken White for the last bit on this, and then we're going to move on to sort of lessons learned and how we do get moving again. But Ken, your last comment on this?
Yeah, so I agree. You have to take judgment against financial economics and the finances of an individual. And if the company goes under, how does that protect your employees and so on and so forth? But from the point when construction is open predominantly because they need us to build hospitals and testing centres. That's fundamentally why construction is open. If they shut construction, we wouldn't have built the Nightingale hospitals, and we wouldn't have been able to build the testing centres. That's fundamentally why construction is open, in my opinion.
Okay. There is a couple of actually other questions that have just come through on that, so I'm going to I'll put them to you on that. In terms of, I guess more for Mark and John Wyer, how are you making sure that your staff are secure, are safe on sites, and they're acting in a way that they ought to be? John Wyer?
Yeah, I was just looking at the questions actually, and the question about heavy lifting was one that came up there. That's why I would agree with Mark and John Melmoe that every site is different, and the risk assessments for each site are different. And where you have operations going on that put people at risk, you simply can't carry out those operations, or you find other ways of doing it. So if you have an operation that puts people closer than 2 meters to each other, then you can't do that operation. Now, I think one of the difficulties is that we've come across is that you then get sites where you could actually continue to work safely, but the work becomes out of sequence, or there are parts that you can't do. So you could continue to work there, but it then becomes uneconomic. So you're then faced with a second choice there. So on those sort of sites, we're not continuing to work either. But I agree with Mark that it isn't about money, and for us it's partly about our clients and partly about our staff. That some of our staff want to get out. They don't have gardens, they live in flats. They actually want to get out and work where they can work safely. Others feel very much that they want to stay at home, so we have to respect that. So I think it's a case of we have made everybody sign risk assessments, read them and understand them, and we develop those risk assessments almost on a daily basis, and they're different for each site as well. So you have to look at the risks issue by issue operation by operation, site by site, and there's no other way of doing it.
Phil Jones, there was a question just come up as well about the government's paying furlough and the length of time it's going to take. Are you confident that they're going to have the systems in place and it will be paid?
Insofar as I can be confident, I think it will be paid. Will the systems be in place at the time scale they've said they will, which has changed twice already? Probably not. I think there'll be huge pressure to ensure that they are keep to as timescale as much as they can. Let's face it. A number of speakers have said that this is not about money or profit. So I assume that the moral argument says that even if the government don't pay it, we'd all be very happy just to take the hit. But he says tongue in cheek. But I think the point is we're relying on that in some cases to sustain the businesses. A lot of people I've spoken to in the industry are actually relying on those furloughed payments to keep their businesses going through this situation. So, will they honour it? I think they'll have to. Will it come in the timescale that we would wish it to? Probably not. I think can I make a point though that with John Melmoe's point, I would absolutely pick up on in his desire to want to assess the real current situation now and to move on in our thinking about how we move forward, how we prepare for the future after this. Because I think all our time and effort, I'm sure you'll come on to it, Jim, but all our time and effort now should be where people want to work and it's safe to work, put their effort into doing so safely. But this is a great time to not just prepare our business to come out of the COVID-19 effects, but actually also take a little bit of a step back time and look at things we might not have done had this not happened. I'm a great optimist. Take advantage of the situation.
Okay, that's good. Right, so let's move on. There's a few other questions that we'll fit in perhaps better later on as we start discussing things. So I guess, quite a lot of experience. I think I read somewhere there's over 150 years of landscaping experience on the panel today. And so you must have seen a lot of ups and downs and a lot of tough times. I just wondered if each of you could sort of have a lesson that you've learned in the past that may be able to help the viewers today in terms of planning themselves if it's the first time that they've ever suffered or been involved in a situation that can affect their business as drastically as this. And again, if I start with John Melmoe on that.
Yeah, well, this is the third significant crisis that I've worked through. It is different. Every crisis is different. But when you look back to the recessions in the 80s, in the 90s, the construction crash, 90, 91, 92, and into the 80s, there were some significant downturns. The difference is they were economic downturns and they didn't involve life. So this is very different in trying to work and find a passage through this. But we will survive. Night will follow day and the world still gyrates. And we've just got to pick our way through this. And it's very difficult to give a blanket advice because the unique natures of all the businesses within the industry. But the situation is, don't forget your true values. Pay your suppliers if you've got cash in the business. Don't pass the pain down the line. Stand true to your beliefs, and that will get you through. And you'll be a stronger business, and your suppliers will respect you more if you just be truthful. If you can't pay a supplier, pick the phone up, talk to them. Do not just use this as an opportunity to pass on pain. And this sort of mandate needs to go right away through to the clients, all the way down the entire supply chain. Just trust and believe in your true values, and that will see you through.
Ken, would you like to add anything to that?
I think a lot of what John said is absolutely correct, and we're all unique businesses, and we've all seen recessions before. Lessons learned from us previously have been: don't curl up and expect this just to go over the top of you. You need to be proactive in what you do about this recession. We're all very much in a period of resolve at the moment. This is the immediate issues: protect our staff, look at our customers, carry out our risk assessments, and work out who can work and who can't. And then we move into a sort of phase of more of cash management, day to day. Have you got enough? How are you going to manage it? Can you take advantage of the loans that are out there? And then really you need to work on how you're going to return to business and get your business back to a scalable level as quickly as possible. And that is going to require a bit of reimagination and reform in the way in which we work. But I agree with John, this will pass. Don't pass the pain down the line. Be true to yourself. Be true to your values, and we will get through this, but it will be a new norm. And the importance is working on once you get through those first two stages, is working on your business plan as to what is your business going to look like, and how do you gear back up quickly and effectively, and how do you deal with the new norm.
John Wyer?
I would obviously agree with all of that. I mean, we took steps quite early on to keep as much cash in the business as possible, and by that I don't mean not paying suppliers. We paused we negotiated with all our lease companies to pause our vehicle leases. We negotiated with the bank to pause payments on mortgage and any loan repayments, and we are working with our suppliers as John suggested, and trying to keep our supply chains working and support our suppliers and our clients too. There are cases where we're doing things where we're probably not going to get any return on it because we want to support our clients through this as well. And I think that and we're aiming to get through this without any further borrowing. And I think it's really important to actually, I'd support something that Phil said, which is that you step back and take a look at what you can do. I mean, I'm actually looking at the moment at how we can accelerate some of the thinking and some of the reforms that we wanted to do to the business, and also some of our external stuff, how we can bring forward the program on that and take this as an opportunity to do some really serious thinking and movement while we've got time to do so. So moving the management team from a sort of firefighting mode into something more reflective, out of which we can build real progress, and then when the business, when trading does start to return to a more normalized situation, we'll then be in a really strong position. So it doesn't feel quite right to say I see this as an opportunity, but certainly while we have the time to think, we should use it as much as we can.
Phil, John, and I guess as well, Phil, now it's 18 months, 2 years into your new role. It gives you plenty of time to have a look at what you're doing and maybe the way forward for your business.
Yeah, it feels like about 3 years in the last couple of weeks, actually. I mean, it's actually, probably 15 months. And I suppose, I mentioned earlier about taking stock and reflecting on things. I think I've probably done that a lot over the last 15 months or so. And one comes to the point where you think, actually give us a break. Let's just, get a free run into this, sort the business out as we have done, get the right cost base, get the right, customer base, develop customer relationships, get a good business plan together, get your strategy, and then let's move forward. Something like this happens. But actually all those things I've just mentioned are things that I believe we should be doing anyway. But actually, as John Wise just said, we should pick up on that now and just make sure we reaffirm where we're going with things. And I think, there are opportunities here in whatever way people see. I mean, in terms of guidance to to other people. Far be it from me to tell people how to run their businesses, because, as a number of people said, every business in this industry is unique in a lot of ways. So, but what have we learned from the past? Well, I think making sure you don't carry any unnecessary cost through your business should be a good plan anyway. But there's always something in there. I think the proactiveness that John Wyer describes around talking to banks, talking to suppliers and clients. Actually, I found over the last couple of weeks that where we've spoken to clients, they've been more than receptive and actually very sensitive to the fact that we're expecting them to not pay. Actually, so far, every client we've got has delivered on their payment dates that they said they would. Now, who knows in a couple of weeks, but I think we have great relationships to the extent that what they've said they'll do. And so far that's been borne out. So have a bit of confidence with those customers. But that comes from, as someone's already said, talking to your suppliers if you're going to manage your cash flow in a different way. And I've had some of those, we've had some of those discussions with suppliers. And again, they've been very receptive. The last thing a supplier wants, and the last thing we want from our customers, is for no one to talk to us about what their intentions are. So engage with people, find out what their intentions are, pick up the phone to a supplier and say, look, cash flow is such that we're going to manage it in this way. Does that work for you? Because actually they're having the conversations down the line and we're having the conversations further up the line. I think that's crucial. Keep talking. I think in some ways we have a fantastic industry. We all know that, and there wouldn't be 250 people on the call if there wasn't a great overwhelming sense of teamwork in landscaping. And I think, talk to the people who are your stakeholders. I think also there's an opportunity here for, if you've got great investors in the business, it's a great time to look around the industry and think where you can invest more. And I think, there'll be more discussion about that as the weeks go on, but there's great opportunity for people to invest in parts of the business, should they so wish, and should they have the investment to do so.
Okay, Mark, do you want to last comment on that then? Lessons learned and any advice you'll give?
I think there's some really, really good stuff from the panel. Going back to John Melmoe's comments about the supply chain, when you're not working, that's possibly one of the first things you will look at, is starving those suppliers. And that's what's driving me out here as well, is to make sure we're actually, as a business, conditioned to go straight in. Do I trust the government? Yeah, I do. I'm sure they'll honour all that. But do I want to be reliant on that? Absolutely not. So as a business, we're taking the overdraft facilities out that they're giving us. Is free money, it's cheap money, potentially. Will we need it? Probably not. But I'm actually making sure we're completely waterproof to get through this. Absolutely. I think people shouldn't panic. I think people should use this time to reflect what they're doing. Are they doing the right thing? I do worry, not so much about the next 3 or 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 3 months. I'm worried about next winter, next autumn, next winter, where those sales are going to go. There's no doubt that a lot of money is being wiped off people's share portfolios. So where a lot of the smaller landscapers were coming out, and we've gone through this Brexit uncertainty and all that, and that since kind of Christmas, we've had blue skies, and the industry looked buoyant on the smaller end. The homeowner kind of doing drives and patios and garden work. I fear that will dry up. I really fear that market's going to be decimated. Not the bigger projects. I think that will still carry on. So actually think about where the work is going to come. Think about this. Certainly from our kind of business, look at the dead wood within it. Stuff that you're paying for. Do you really need this stuff? I think it makes you reflect. It's probably not about it. And I've been quoted on saying in past recessions, a recession, this is not a recession, but it's a world event. But actually, from it, and I remember John O'Connor saying to me, when I had some financial difficulties, the cream always rises to the top. So the people that are listening into this, it's because they're keen, they're interested, and they're interested to work on their businesses. And I think I think as Phil said, we're all working on our businesses all the time. But this basically gives you kind of clarity of thought. as to what kind of work you want to do, and where is that work going to come from, and how are you going to open those conversations. So I would say use this time wisely. You know, turn off the Netflix and work on your business plan. Work on your business. Even if you're not, if you furloughed your staff and you furloughed those, and I understand why companies have done that. Personally, like John Melmoe said, I think it was a bit too swift, off the mark. And I'm glad as a business we've done what we've done, but use your time wisely.
Okay, John, do you want to come back on that?
No, I want to sort of follow on from that, talking about working on the business and looking at things. And I was interested by Anna French's question about looking at low carbon ways of taking carbon out of the business. And that's certainly one of the areas that, I mean, we were already talking about that, exploring ways in which we could do that and still remain economic. And that's certainly something that we've been talking about looking at over the next couple of months as well. It's always a difficult thing, but that's an example of how you can use this time to look at alternatives, I think.
Okay, and there's a question here actually. Now we go back to some questions from Richard Gardner. What innovation has the situation forced you to develop? Start with you, Phil Jones, on that. Any innovations that you've been forced into developing?
I think there's probably going to be more innovations where people have kept guys working on sites. Innovations, simple ones, of course, are how to plant heavy standard trees without using two people stood together, shifting it into a hole. To put it basically, you've got to innovate on that. You've got to work out how to do that, and I think that's where, actually, as a business, as an industry, that's the sort of point at which we need to be innovative to get over the current crisis. I don't think we're at a point where, having obviously not working very much on sites at the moment, where we have needed to be too innovative. Other than that, what I've just suggested, innovation in terms of how do you get half a dozen members of staff to site without them sitting in the same vehicles. It's all very basic stuff, but actually it's what we're about. The most basic innovations in our industry are normally the most pertinent ones and the most advantageous ones.
Anyone else want to come back on innovation? Mark?
Well, the only thing I would say is that this kind of format, using these social media, these web-based to have meetings, and certainly the one little thing that I've noticed is like the APL cluster groups. You know, they're actually doing now these phone-in systems, which are so much more efficient and so much better. So I think even just this thing will make people communicate in a much more environmentally effective way, that you can work from home. So I think the way that our trade associations give us information and we interact, as everybody's walking up to this. I think it's really this will stay.
John Melmoe?
Yes, just picking up on really reinforcing what Mark said. Just this very format will be taken forward. I mean, how many times have we been called into central London to a site meeting that lasts half an hour, takes you 2.5 hours each way to get there, and you've got a 5-minute slot? What a waste of time. You know, what does that pollutants does that put into the environment? So these formats, we will have to, and we've got the opportunity to change how we perceive to do business previously, and it's got to be for the positive side. There's a lot of positivity to come out of this. Each individual company will be slightly different, but you know, let's embrace this. Let's embrace this change, enforced change, but let's embrace it and see how we can roll this out to the benefit of our clients and our wider company.
Okay, so just again moving on now then. So my understanding from all 5 of you is that as soon as it finishes, we're almost going to get back to normal in one way or another, whatever normal will be. It feels quite positive. The whole industry is going to change. This is going to have a major effect on business. Do we think landscaping is immune to this, or do we think it's going to hit us maybe further down the line? We will we'll suffer in terms of 18 months down the line in terms of it. At the moment, and last thing I want to do is a bit doom and gloom, but you all feel quite positive about your business. You feel that, as soon as we're allowed to, we're going to get back up and running quite quickly. But is that necessarily the case? And, when will the country have to pay this money back? John Melmoe?
Yeah, no, this is really a game of financial Jenga. This is how we react over the forthcoming months will actually dictate the shape of the industry. This is no quick fix. This will last for some considerable time. All this money that the government is throwing at this will have to be repaid. There will be higher taxes. There are likely to be individuals that will mothball projects. So the fallout for this, you can't actually define it, and it will be different for each individual element of the industry. But the industry has to be careful going forward. It's a fantastic opportunity. There is oodles of business out there in all sectors. Some will shrink, others will expand. The larger major projects, construction projects which are well funded, being planned for years, will continue. They won't suddenly dry up. Some of the private work may dry up, etc. But it's the shape of the industry. It won't be as it was going into this. It can't be. It will have to consolidate and it will have to change. It is very dangerous times, and they won't be in the first few months. There will be 6 months down the line, 12 months down the line. There is no quick fix to this. We're not going to be bouncing back. This is a slow plod.
Ken Wyer?
I agree. I mean, obviously, the length of time it will take to bounce back and the impacts will depend upon at which point we manage to contain the virus, because at the moment we haven't managed to contain the virus, and that will have an impact. And let's make no mistake, this is the largest downturn in demand since the Second World War. All of the life will change. Will we shop the same? Will the high street was already on a fall down? Will it still look the same? All sorts of sectors will change and adapt. Life will never be the same as it was prior to COVID-19. There are opportunities like there are in all sorts of sectors. Who would have thought things that are booming at the moment? I mean, there are winners and losers all the time, and there will be new winners and losers in the new world. But I think it's far too early to ascertain quite how quick we'll bounce back. I mean, the stats are at the moment, if you look at Kinsley reports and things, that if we contain the virus inside the first quarter of this year, then the bounce back will be quite quick. If we don't retain the virus until the third quarter of this year, then potentially the economic impact will go on for 3-4 years, potentially more. So I think until such time as the virus is contained, we can't grasp all of the economic impact. But there are millions of people worldwide who have lost their jobs already, outside of this. I mean, there are huge changes to the global economy, to the global marketplace, and to the way in which we move, travel, and do business. And our industry will have to find a way of fitting into that. But we should need to take good cognizance of the over economic impact, but we also need to look at the impact of our sector itself and how that works going forward. But this is like no time ever seen before. No time ever seen before.
John Wyer, do you want to come on that one? John, just an extra add-on to that question as well, in terms of, do you think in the whole way that landscaping is performing, and in terms of our green credentials and the environment, this is a real opportunity to change what we do?
I do think it is, actually. I do think it's an opportunity, because I think there is a chance to step back, but I don't think there are, having looked at this quite a lot over the last few months, I don't think there are any easy solutions to that, particularly in contracting. And one of the, I'm involved in a series of workshops at the moment looking at this, not in our business, externally. And it's clear that it's very easy for specifiers and designers to say you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that, but actually at the sharp end of contracting, it's much more difficult to make real changes and savings in terms of your carbon footprint. It's really difficult. But I do think that there are opportunities at the moment to think more about that when you're not quite so embedded in the coalface, you know. But one of the things that I was going to say, I do agree with both Ken and John that this is going to have, this is not, it is a recession, but the underlying causes of the recession are not the structural problems that we had in the economy in 2012 or whatever. It's caused by something else, but the hangover will be there. I think, yeah, probably 2, 3, 4 years, something like that. But if I had one message that I would want to say to everybody listening about this, is that when you come out of this, the other side, and some normalized market returns, it's to compete by being better, not by being cheaper, because ultimately cutting your price to get a job may seem like the best way to keep your guys working and to keep the business moving forward, but you're just eating away at yourself from the inside then. And certainly that was the one lesson that we learned in the last recent recession, was that clients, we thought that things were going to become very price driven, and they weren't. People were looking for competition on competency and solidity of a business, rather than trying to buy things at the cheapest price. And that's certainly the strategy that we used, and it paid off. And I think that will be the same going forward.
Okay, Phil, as you declared earlier as a positive person, how do you think the industry is going to look when we come out the other side?
Well, I agree with the previous guys in what they've said about the long-term view, but I can't help thinking that that the short-term view is slightly different, because if you imagine, as is the case, there are, if we're saying there's 70% of construction sites are closed down, or at least we can't do any landscape construction on them, then there will be a need, one assumes, for those projects to be finished, however long the duration of those projects. And I actually see once they open up again, should they open up again, which they inevitably will, providing they continue to trade on those sites, I actually see a rush to get those projects finished. Now that's a great opportunity, because obviously contractually a lot of us have got obligations to finish those anyway. But that comes off the back of a number of businesses having paused their work, a number of supply chain partners having paused their operation. And I wonder how that's going to play out in terms of availability of materials, availability of staff, because I think the one thing we haven't covered at the moment is the number of staff. I mean, if you look on some of the recruitment boards at the moment, or the recruitment world, there's quite a few staff already starting to look at what they can do next, should their job not exist in the near to medium future. And that's, that's natural, I think, because when it's a bit like the Christmas break every year, people start to look at what might be their next job opportunity. But you mentioned to me the other day, Jim, forgive me for using it, about the Formula One safety car. I think it's a great analogy. The safety car's out. We're all moving at different, although you're only allowed to do 50 miles an hour, I think, behind a safety car. We're all moving at slightly different speeds, in different positions behind this safety car. And generally, as you, again, forgive me for using this, but I think I've thought about this. It's a great analogy. As soon as the safety car goes in, people will go at different speeds. They will go at different speeds, and some will crash off the next chicane. Some will come from the back and do really well. And those that think they're going to do really well will have a cock up in the pits.
I can't claim that. Someone actually quoted that to me, so I can't claim it. Mark, you seem to enjoy that one.
I kind of like that analogy, really. I'm behind that pace car. My foot will be to the metal as soon as we come out. It really, really will. I mean, you can be. This is serious. A lot of people go through a lot of pain. There's absolutely. I'm not being flippant about it at all. But actually, you've got to get. We've got to get in perspective. We've got to get look after our people and get ourselves and our businesses ready to go when we can go. I think I'm a kind of glass half full kind of person. I think there's some major challenges. My wife works in the airline industry, decimated. there's going to be massive casualties and a lot of pain. But I definitely think landscape is always quite resilient, and we're very good at finding new markets. You know, one of the biggest things that was concerned to me prior to all this, apart from Brexit, was water and flooding. And a lot of those things, a lot of those environmental things can be and should be landscape driven. You know, roof gardens, rain gardens, flood attenuation stuff. There's loads and loads of positives that need to be addressed. Now, okay, the sun's coming out now, and historically people forget that we've actually got this serious problem called flooding. And it was interesting. I was only reading yesterday. So Michael Pitt wrote a report, 2008, and said flooding in this country was more of a threat than terrorism and pandemic flu. Interesting, actually. Probably not, actually. But that has not gone away. And there's some amazing opportunities for our industry. There's some amazing opportunities to tap into that.
So Mark, heavily in the top end domestic market, do you think that's going to suffer badly? Do you think I think there's a question for someone in terms of, you know, do you think the bubble is going to be burst in the top end domestic market in terms of landscaping? And also, what's going to happen to the property market? And what do you think? How do you think that will affect the landscaping sector?
Well, I think, you know, to not put too fat a point on this, when anything like this happens, there's people make an awful lot of money from it. And people with a lot of cash will be banking more money than we can dream about through other people's misfortunes and this. So that top end level, no, I don't think it will. People will want a deal like they did when there's any recession. So work will be possibly harder to secure, but actually, those people with money will still have loads of money. The smaller end, as I kind of alluded to before, I think that will be hurt for a while. And there'll be a lot of people, as the panel have already said, that come out of this with no jobs. So I think the smaller end I worry about, and time will tell. Time will tell. But my feeling is July, this will have gone over. And then the fallout will be picking up the bits of the fallout. As I said, for my own business, we've got work throughout this year into next year. But as I said to you, one of the things that I'll be worrying about as I drive this business is, as John Melmoe said, 6-9 months is where the work is going to come. And that's what I'm hunting now, hunting where that work is going to come from. But I think residential, top end, yeah, it might get hit a little bit, but I think that will come back strong.
Okay. Phil, you mentioned the rush to get jobs done and quickly to get done. How's that going to have impact on staff? And is there going to be, have you got enough staff to fulfill that in the times that you're going to be given to fill those contracts? Is there going to be pressure on staff to put in a lot of overtime? Is there going to be pressure in terms of recruiting more people?
What you just described, Jim, is an average week in commercial construction. I think I think will we have enough people? Do we want to talk about the landscape industry being short of really skilled people? I think really skilled people, there's always a shortage, but actually pairs of hands, I don't think, from our point of view, I don't think that will be an issue. There's been quite a lot of commentary in the press and media over the last few days about people having been off work for so long. Should it be 3 months? The sort of state of mind, mental state of mind they'll be in, and physical state actually, to want to get back into work if there is a rush, could be an interesting one. I personally don't think that'll take very long, but I suppose if everyone is rushing to get stuff done, then everyone's going to be looking for more staff to do it. I don't think the employment market is going to be, it's not going to be a difficult job to find people, but finding skilled people, as always, will be an issue. I don't think as a business we'll have an issue with that. We'll just crack on with the projects we had with the number of staff we had before. With as I say, the issue we always have of covering, the projects we've got with the people we need to do it. I don't think that would be a significant change.
Okay, Ken, and in terms of fulfilling contracts on time and it's now going to be delayed. Where does that sit in terms of who takes a hit on that? Will that be you as the landscaper? Where's the responsibility, and where's the money going to end up coming from to pay for the delayed in contracts?
Yeah, it really depends upon the nature and type of contract that you're under, and what, as often contracts are adulterated with Z clauses or some other form, but largely this is a force majeure, or it is a civil unrest, in as much that a force majeure will give you entitlement to time, but won't necessarily give you entitlement to cost. And also with a force majeure, you have to be able to demonstrate that it was the sole reason for the interruption to the business or the delivery of the project. And indeed, you still have a responsibility to have mitigated delay and disruption as much as possible. There is possibly an easier way of going through under civil unrest clauses. It's the maintenance that becomes the larger issue, really, because most of the sites are shut down. But the question comes, if nobody cuts the grass for 6 or 8 weeks and you go back, who's paying for that additional maintenance cost, and who's paying for that time? And that's what's unknown. And that's what I'd like to see the larger associations doing something about, to protect the industry on that side of things, because it really isn't clear. On one hand, you know, people are going out to enjoy the parks and gardens, but as you know, if nobody's maintaining the parks, then there's nothing there to enjoy. So it really isn't clear, and that is something I'd like to see the associations try get some greater clarity on. But force majeure is quite clear inside the contract. It's an entitlement to time, but not to cost.
John Melmoe, do you want to come back on that one?
Yeah, this is one of the dangers going forward, is working what effectively is non-productive overtime to recover the time that's been lost. But and that's where the company will be paying overtime for work that would be done in normal time. I think this is a situation where you have to engage with your workforce, because the company in its own cannot go through the pain. It shouldn't be exposed to this financial risk on its own. It should be shared throughout the entire business and throughout the entire staff. If people are looking towards companies as well as government to assist them financially through this situation, then they have to step up to the plate and do their bit. So therefore, if you need additional hands to push work through, and on one hand they want a loan from the company to assist them financially, then they should step up to the plate and assist the company in getting through the pain. And so this is where you have to be very creative going forward. We can't just stand and operate as we did pre-virus. We have to be almost tear up the employment manual and start again. Because without it, without bringing the entire workforce into this scenario, your management is trying to do it on their own, and they can't. They have to do it as an entire business for the protection of the entire business. And therefore, do not just start doing things because we always do it this way. We always work overtime to catch up, because you aren't hiding for nothing, guys. So you have to be very careful. This is one of the danger points going forward. I would just like to very quickly start looking beyond this situation as how the business is going to start to look for rebuilding the opportunities whilst they've got time on their hands. You know, what about entering industry awards? Let's look at something positive going forward. We've got no Chelsea this year, Mark, to get in the way of putting forward a fantastic Bali awards presentation, Mark. You know, these are the opportunities, these are the positive spins that people should be looking at, using this time wisely to further the business and equally give the staff a bit of a buzz on the way through.
John, I'm going to come back to you on that. I've got to say this. How good would a Pro Landscaper Business Award be that says how well you've managed your business through these circumstances? It'd be absolutely fantastic. There's a plug. John, what about the associations though? Because I remember speaking to you after Carillion, and I think you thought collectively the landscaping sector reacted poorly and not together on that. So do you think there is an opportunity here for an association to put it all together and have some kind of joint task, joint opinion, or a way of pushing it forward? John Melmoe.
Oh, definitely. I'll be honest. The Carillion didn't happen for the associations. It was a non-event, and yet it crucified an awful lot of people. It hurt an awful lot of businesses coming through. So I do think that the associations across the board did very little in that situation. Coming forward, what I would like to see is the associations getting behind name and shame of main contractors who will use this opportunity for delaying payments. They're the people I would like to see absolutely nailed and crucified publicly, because once that starts happening, it's a slippery slope. And this is what happened in the last recession. The minute we hit a recession, and we're not in a recession technically yet, but in the last recession, the main contractors turned off the taps. They went from 60 to 90 to 120 days. They were selling performance bonds if you wanted to get your performance bonds back. It was absolutely immoral. And yet all the major associations, industry associations, said nothing. And I think coming out of this, it would be good to see a task force that people could report into in the associations, where the associations could then take the cudgel and go and do business with some of these contractors if they start turning off the financial tap.
Ken, do you want to come back on that? Saw your thumbs up.
No, well, I agree with John. I mean, I think the associations, when Carillion went under, did nothing. I mean, Carillion was a big client for us. I never even received a phone call from the association. It was, as John said, it was as if it never happened. And I think the response to Barley's letter from government, in some extent, shows the contempt to which some of us hold our industry, and it was a non-response. And there's many things I think the associations need to be doing to protect everybody, retentions, payments, all sorts of things. But main contractors try on many occasions to bully commercial contractors, and we really don't have any support behind us to stand up to them. How do you take on the likes of some of these worldwide conglomerate companies? You just simply can't. And they do what will, and I agree with John. Well, let's get some naming and shaming done, because 90 days, 120 days, didn't take a genius to work out these beggars were going to go bust, did it?
So there's obviously some good support for John and the name and shame there. I've got Wayne Grills, Barley, saying that he's more than happy to name and shame some of these major contractors. So maybe that's a way forward. Just going back on another thing that John Melmoe said, and I'll give this to you, Phil, in terms of changing the contract of your staff about that overtime and how they need to help the company once the market starts coming back. What's your thoughts on that, and how do you think your staff would react to that?
I think the principle of we're all in it together is absolutely correct. I think John's right. I hadn't thought as far, to be honest, as needing to or wanting to change employment contracts. I found over the last 12 to 15 months that where there's a rationale and a clearly explained business plan and an intention, where staff agree, and actually where some staff don't agree but see the point, I've never seen the need to change contracts of employment to achieve what we need to achieve, and the team have come along actually brilliantly from my point of view in our situation, without having to do that. Would there be a need for that? If there's a need, I can see why it's suggested that it's a good time to do it, because as I said before, we're all in it together suggests that people would be more willing at the moment to enter into what is normally a very contentious debate around changes of contracts of employment. Personally, I don't see the need, but I can see why it would be maybe held in abeyance in case it was needed.
Okay, John Wyer, in terms of contracts for your staff, on contracts.
No, I take John Melmoe's point completely. And I don't think John was necessarily, he can speak for himself in a minute, as I'm sure he will, but I don't think he's necessarily saying that we should change contracts, but change the spirit of the way the relationship works between the employee and the employer, if you like. I think that actually will be a positive coming out of this, that the feeling of, to use that terrible phrase, we're all in it together. I mean, I think as a business, that's how we feel. This feels like some huge external thing that's bearing down both personally on everybody in the organisation, but also on the organisation itself. And you know, one of the first things that we did was that we had been planning an internal social media platform for all our staff, and we rolled that out much more quickly than we had been intending to. So everybody's on that, and we're communicating with everybody through that platform. And we've also changed the way in which we communicate with our staff, so that people who are furloughed, we're actively in contact with those people. And also, in fact, with our client base as well, we're more actively communicating with our client base than we were before. I don't think we can take anything for granted. And so the two sides of what John Melmoe was talking about, that you know, we need to encourage and support our staff, and as John said, they in turn need to help us through this, because the survival and success of the business depends completely on our people. Without them, we can't do anything.
Mark, you talked about the smaller domestic coming under pressure and struggling. Do you think that's going to be an area in terms of where the prices may get driven down?
Yeah, I mean, that is a certain concern. I mean, talking about the smaller domestic landscape, and obviously all the trade bodies struggle to get to grips with the magnitude and to get the right information out to its members, you know, both APL and Barley, for sure. But certainly, just, I mean, on APL's point of view, now there's this kind of very intimate community that's come on these social platforms, which is fantastic. And I think actually holding our nerve and working out the tools to do this job. And as John said, it won't be necessarily about price driven. I mean, those kind of jobs, who wants that kind of work anyway, where it's just driven by cheap? It's about quality, it's about performance, it's about standards. As John Melmoe says, it's about awards and getting yourself positioned to do that. It's never, for me, it's never been about price. I've never been interested in buying work. It's a short-term game. And certainly, I think all our trade associations should be anti it, because the whole thing, it just doesn't stack up. The trade suppliers, the nurseries, they're all going to be beaten up after this. And a lot of them will have failed. A lot of them will have failed. So what we don't want to do is buying work and then knocking our suppliers down to try and make the numbers stack up. I'm really concerned about the smaller contractors. The larger contractors, you know, okay, work might just freeze. I don't think it will. I think we'll have a wobble for a few months, and a lot of this work that's scheduled will carry on. I think the smaller stuff will dry up. Absolutely, I'm pretty convinced. And how do we kickstart that? How do we generate? How do we look at, you know, thinking creatively to get confidence back into that market? Working with some of the trade suppliers, some finance initiatives. So there's lots of ways that I think we could, but I think it'll need kickstarting. Yeah. So to answer your question, yes, I do. But is our trade association doing as much for it? I think our trade association will step up. As I said, I know the APL are doing these very intimate, so people can actually reach out into the community, because that's what it's about. It's about actually sharing. And you know, I can't always get to meetings, but I can to one of these platforms where you can sign in for half an hour, and it's those little things, those little tips and hints. That's what contractors need to steady the nerve and take out the panic.
Okay, there's a couple of questions coming in. I'm going to roll two of them into one, really. The first one is, what does the panel think about the government's funding schemes and the government's support to industry? And the second one is all about, in terms of, as landscapers and as companies, how important is it to keep your brand and your work and your communication to your customers and potential customers at this current time? So first about the government, and then secondly about your own marketing and branding of your own businesses. So start with you, John Melmoe, if we can, in terms of the government.
Well, the government, I think they did a very wise thing in stepping up to the mark and preventing an overnight meltdown of the economy. The money they promised to pump in, I think, is absolutely the right thing. I think the loans to businesses, I don't agree with, where they're not justified in terms of being backed with a facility. I think that is very short term, and I think the damage, all that's doing is delaying the inevitability of some companies going under. So that will actually extend the pain rather than the pain being felt in the next 6 months, 9 months or so. It's just prolonged it. So I don't think that element has been very helpful. It may be for the individuals, but I don't believe for the long term of the businesses is the right thing. And certainly for the long term of the economy, I can't see it helping.
Okay, Phil, do you want to come on that? Government and your branding.
Yeah, I've not much to add to. In fact, I haven't got anything to add to what John's just said. Actually, I think he's absolutely spot on. To the extent to which some companies can access that really need to, there has to be a question mark against that, because I know a number of people I've spoken to have found it very difficult to see how they could justify it. But I think John's right. It puts off the inevitable to a different time down the line. From a point of view of branding, I took a slightly different view a couple of weeks ago from the social media, from all sorts of sort of social media platforms, where a lot of people seem to be thinking, let's get out there, let's make sure we keep our branding going. And it was almost, from my point of view, and there's a time when this changes, and I think it's about to, but from my point of view, slightly distasteful, actually, where people were throwing a lot of stuff out there, almost taking advantage of the fact that there'd been a change in everyone's circumstances. But obviously there is a need to keep branding going. I think you mentioned in the question, Jim, that the most important area from my point of view is to keep communication with clients and potential clients. You know, I mentioned earlier, and so did Ken, I think, that, you know, our sales teams have probably never been busier. Not just in estimating, but in contacting with, getting in contact with clients and potential clients. So there is a need for that, because obviously I mentioned earlier about the rush of work to complete projects after this is over, but that gap that will be created if we're not in the psyche of our clients or potential clients will be quite significant. How do we do that? Well, social media is probably one of the main, if not only, ways of doing it at the moment, more practical ways. So I think it's right. I said the time will come when I think the sort of distasteful side of it will disappear. It's probably on its way, actually, because we need to start, as a number of people have said this morning, we need to start to look at how it looks going forward, not how it looks now.
Mark, so come to you on the government and the brand. Just a couple of things first. Lots of congratulations and well done for speaking up for the small contractor or small landscaper. There was a question there in terms of what size turnover would you say is a small landscaper?
If you look at the APL's membership, most of those are band 1, band 2s. So they're $250,000, 100 to 100,000 to 300,000, 400,000 turnover businesses. You know, I think John's got a very valid point about the business loans. I think it's very, very valid, you know, giving this money away to businesses that are actually teetering on the edge before all this kicked off anyway. Are we applying for that as a business? Absolutely. You know, absolutely. Batten your hatch down, get what you can, and protect your business. Whether we need it, whether we use it, it's not knee-jerk reaction. It's get it and put it aside. We won't need to use that, but some companies will 100% need to use that. You need to be able to fund this stuff coming out. What was the second point, Jem?
About your branding and marketing yourselves and communication to your clients.
Never been as important to do it right now, so marketing is, when you go into things like this, you should be really up in your game. Interestingly, I haven't put nothing about any social media posts about the fact that we are working, not a thing, because as Phil said, I think it can be distasteful, and actually some people would frown upon it. I'm doing it for my selfish things, for my people, my business, and that is my business. And what other people do, we shouldn't judge each other. We've all got the same recommendations, and we should do what we feel appropriate to our business and our morality. So I agree about all that side of it. So we're very kind of low-key and just getting on about our work. But actually going forward, those businesses that sell themselves as being ultra professional will survive. I go back to John O'Connor, cream rises to the top. We will. Those companies that are actually look as though they're ready to take on the challenge, whether they are or not, the imagery, their vans, their equipment, everything, those businesses will come through this. Absolutely, I do believe that. So yeah, very much so. I'm kind of really charged up about all that. Am I? With Chelsea, yeah, I'm gutted. I'm gutted that Chelsea's not going to happen. But on a positive side, and trying to be positive about things, 31 years, I've never had May. Oh, actually, that's quite exciting. I can't jump on a plane and go anywhere, but I'm lucky that I'm working here at Wisley, and that's my Chelsea. So, every cloud's got a silver lining.
Ken, then what about you in terms of the government support and marketing and communicating yourselves at the moment?
Alrighty. Well, I think the government support, the banks are not daft. They're only going to lend money to businesses that are viable. The CBILS loan, you have to be profitable, you have to be viable. That's the way it's going. Okay, the government's making more money available, but the banks are still only lending to viable businesses. But, the banks are not used to lending because after the 2008, they were kind of shut down from lending, weren't they? The government owned 82% of NatWest, and they don't know your businesses. That's the danger for those who do need the money and who are viable. The banks don't know your business model and are less likely to lend. But the banks won't lend you money if you're not viable. So it may be putting off inevitable, but I think the banks are not daft. That you have to do due diligence. You have to present your numbers. You have to present your story, and it has to be a good case. The banks are, NatWest is owned by the government. They want to give you money, but they still want to make sure they're going to get it back. The government's not giving away. So that hand, I think only businesses that are viable will get money. On social media and marketing, do you know what? I actually, there's two schools of thought there. I'm very positive about all of this. Actually, I think there's some great stuff will come out of this. So there will be some that go to the wall. I don't want to shove social media in people's face, but I kind of also like the Schweppes mentality. During the war, Schweppes wasn't available, but they kept shouting about Schweppes for victory. And then when World War was won, people started drinking gin and tonic with Schweppes. And I think there's something positive. Let's shout about how great our businesses are, how great the marketplace is, how great the industry is, and keep it out there. And each their own to what level. I don't think necessarily you have to bang on about yourselves, but I think definitely market the industry without a doubt.
Okay, John, what about you and the government? Are you supporting what they've done?
I think that the furloughing scheme was a real lifeline to businesses, and in fact, generally speaking, both in terms of the measures we've taken internally and the measures the government have done, the ones that are about short-term support are the right ones. So in other words, we've taken a freeze on our vehicle leases, we've taken a short-term freeze on some of our repayments, but we're not looking to borrow money or more money, because that's a sort of longer-term thing, and the solutions that look at this is a short-term thing. The hangover may be long-term, but the event itself is relatively short term in terms of its, the immediate impact. And I think so the furloughing scheme, I did really welcome that, actually, because I think for businesses that have seen their revenue go off a cliff, then otherwise they were looking at laying loads of people off, and that makes recovery more difficult. So I do broadly agree with what John and Ken were saying about the government loan scheme. I think in terms of, I would actually like to pick up on something that Mark said as well about the smaller contracts and smaller contracting. I think that will be hit very hard, and that is a big concern. It's a big concern for us all, actually, because I think that wealthier clients and bigger corporate projects are driven by confidence rather than need. So people stop spending when they lose confidence, and they start spending when their confidence returns. But for quite a big chunk of the market, it's not about confidence, it's about whether you've got the cash. And a lot of people just are not going to have the cash going forwards. So I think that the lower end, the sort of in terms of contract size, which is what somebody asked in one of the questions, I would suggest that contracts going from sort of 30 to 100, 150, those sort of contracts are going to be hit on the domestic side, are going to be hit harder, and on the commercial side. On the bigger contracts, I don't see it as being such an issue. I mean, obviously, we've done a lot of work on branding and positioning in the last year, and that is something that we take very seriously, and we're looking at the ways in which we communicate with clients now, and we're also planning our communications coming out of the other end of this, and planning our marketing coming out the other end of this. We're looking quite seriously at that now and putting things together now for what we see in however long it's going to be. It might be 6, 12, 20 weeks, who knows, but when we want to put our foot flat, everything's there, the gas comes, if you like. So preparing the business for that. I also wanted to pick up on one of the other questions that somebody asked about in terms of home working, how that will, whether that will be permanent changes to our business going forward or not. And several people have said, the use of Zoom, and we use Microsoft Teams a lot as well, that sort of way of working is very useful. Like John, I've been to design team meetings and project meetings where you can sit through a 2-hour meeting for 10 minutes on your bit, and you have to listen to all the stuff about air conditioning structures in the meantime. So if you can do this sort of thing and avoid that, that's good. But I actually think that it may. It's interesting. There's a lot of stuff on social media from entrepreneurs saying this changes the rules. Overheads are a thing for the dinosaurs, and I don't think it's quite as black and white as that, but I do think that it will change the way in which we use fixed offices and permanent offices, and we probably will have some people working from home for some of the time going forward. I think it probably will change working practices permanently in this country.
Perfect.
Not radically.
Okay, thanks. I think Mark has to shoot off shortly. Just the last question and comment to everyone, really, or comments to come on to it before we wrap up. So as senior figures in the industry, as you are, and respected people, what do you think your role is over the next few months? And then the last part of that then is, in terms of as an industry, where should the collaboration be, and how should that be presented going forward about how we come out of this circumstances in a much stronger position? So one is your role, and then is what do you think as a collaboration in the industry should be doing to come out of this? I'll start with, do you want to start first, Mark?
Well, I mean, certainly what should I do is lead by example. So be an exemplar of how to do things by the letter of the law safely. and I think collaboration wise. So I do an awful lot of mentoring to smaller companies, as I know Ken does and others do as well. I think certainly we need to be doing a lot more of that. An interesting question came up about getting our trade associations to instill confidence in the general public. I think that's a very good point. So, and I think actually Phil made a good point about talking the whole thing up. You know, getting out and talking the thing up, talking our industry up, as everybody will be on a bit of a flat downer on this. And what better way is gardening and horticulture to lift people's spirits? So I think, you know, champion the cause, basically. Champion the cause.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Mark. Cheers.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Mark. The role is already do some bits and pieces, but is to stay positive, to give some advice. I am positive about what's going on. I think my role is to review things and to see things as they are, and then to see things that are better than they are, and to take action, and to hope that action spreads itself, and to remain positive about the industry and where we're going. I think there's been a lot of positive things in our company. Although the furloughs already, we're in a good financial position. I probably am fortunate that I don't actually need any help to get through this period, but like Mark will take some. But I'm here to help anybody that cares to reach out to me in whichever way I can do. And as always, I've been an advocate of the associations trying to collaborate, and it's trying to get a clear resource pool of information together, I think, in first and foremost. And then going back to John's point earlier, you know, I think the associations need to go and knock a few heads together out there on main contractors and other bits and people to support the industry as a whole. But as a business and as a person, I think the role is to be positive. In a strange way, I'm quite looking forward to this. I quite like it.
Yeah. Okay. John Wyer?
Yeah. So I would agree with Mark that he talked about mentoring. I think you know, we probably all do quite a lot of that. I think that passing on knowledge and good practice, sharing that and promoting it. I think sometimes people think that is something which is counterproductive for you as a business. I think the reverse is true on the whole, is that it raises everybody's game, and you know, that's a good thing, and that's a good thing for you as a business as well. So I actually think sharing good practice and you know, making sure that more people follow that and educating people about how to run a good business is a really positive thing. In terms of the associations, I would support what other people said. I'd add one thing to it, which is that I think there may be a rebalancing generally of people's attitudes to people in all industries who are less well paid. I think that you know, there's been a lot of talk about key workers, but in fact, key workers are all sorts of people, and you know, I would sort of say not only key workers, it's the sort of invisible workers, really. You know, so the people who deliver your DPD packages to your door, and you know, people who look after the parks, as Ken was saying, people who, you know, you see the people on the tills in the supermarket, but you don't see the people who are working in the warehouse out the back, or the, you know, those sort of invisible people who society just hasn't valued in the last 15 years. I'm hoping to see a little bit of a rebalancing in society's view about that, and I think that our associations could play a role in helping to promote, as they already are doing through Go Landscape and Who's Landscape and things like that, you know, the role of horticulture, both as a positive influence on the world, but also something that should be valued, both you know, financially and in terms of its standing, and that would be a good thing.
Perfect. Phil?
Yeah, I think personally, a number of people have mentioned the word leadership. I think that's absolutely right, both in terms of leading the business, making sure that administratively we've got everything as right as we possibly can have, from making sure we've taken advantage of everything we can financially through this next few weeks and months, but also making sure the business is in good shape structurally and process wise to take advantage of the future when that comes. Leadership, well, I think that's a massive role, I think, for all of us who run a business over the next few months and years, because that's all about instilling confidence in our people. We mentioned earlier about keeping our people on board, asking them to recognise that it's a two-way process, it's a partnership. I believe we do that, and a lot of our businesses in the industry do that anyway. But that certainly is a key role. Leadership is vital. Of course, leadership's not just when you run a business, it's what the other guys have mentioned around leading the industry. And I do feel a slight disappointment that we as an industry have been palmed off in the discussions we've had with the government through our trade associations over the last couple of weeks. It's maybe not a surprise because in the scale of things, we're not that big. But I think, as others have said, we need to find a way of people taking more notice of us. We're able to do that if, as other people have said again, if we show how important the industry is. You know, the membership of our trade associations in some areas is massive in terms of grounds maintenance, and a number of people have mentioned parks this morning. Parks maintenance staff are vital at the moment. And rightly so, are continuing to maintain parks in a safe way. That's a very good way of keeping our profile high. We just got to make sure that we're taken seriously. I love the idea of the mentoring. I hope that in some ways what you guys have done, Pro Landscape, this morning with this event has helped to do that. And I know, seeing some of the comments come through, that's certainly the case in terms of people's appreciation of it. So we got to. I agree. We've got to share our experience. I don't think it's a threat. I think the same as John Wyer said earlier. It's not a threat. It's an advantage, because actually, when you start to try and address the issues like, will people start to undercut other people? Well, if everyone appreciates the good principles of good business, then hopefully they won't.
Perfect. And John Melmoe, the final word for you.
Yeah, I think it's we've got to look positive going forward. There's fantastic opportunities out there. Occasionally we don't see them, but we've got industry awards which will boost the profile. Readily waiting out there. It's party time. That's what we've got to look forward to. We're coming through this together. We've got to be firm and strong. Don't drop standards. Do not, whatever happens, drop standards. Maintain the standards out there, and the industry will come out the stronger for it.
Thank you very much. Thank you all, panel. It's been absolutely fantastic and really, really interesting to listen to. Thank you to the audience and people who participated by putting questions in. It's really appreciated, and I hope you got as much out of it as I have. Keep safe, keep your family safe, and keep your staff safe. Thank you all very much.